It was a big deal for New Zealand, wasn't it? It really does reflect a lot of the drug syndicates that we're dealing with today, right? You know, set up the networks, start bringing cannabis in, making a lot of money out of that, which gives you the money to then go to harder drugs. But, you know, they went straight to heroin. So, you know, there's a lot of money to be made back then from heroin. When I joined the drug squads in '86, basically 99% of the work we did was dealing with home-baked heroin labs. And it's a direct result of what occurred in New Zealand with the addiction of people to heroin. So when the Mr. Asia Group syndicate gets taken out, good old Kiwis come up with a number 8 solution of manufacturing heroin from codeine-based tablets. And it was big, it was a big market back then. We did have a tendency to want to use the strongest of drugs that we could get a hold of. There's a lot of harm coming off the back of that. The labs were incredibly dangerous, and we took a number of those labs out during that period. I remember one guy there who was particularly well-known, notorious robber in town. We saved his life twice. We did the warrants, went in, he was overdosing on heroin. You know, that was the nature of, you know, the people we were dealing with. Most of those people were just normal people, suckered in to a horrific addiction, into circumstances where they had no control over it, and thereby were committing offending, you know, prostitution, offending or whatever, or cooking themselves to pay for what they were doing. You know, it was really tragic. Interestingly, meth actually stays, when it first comes in, it kind of stays relatively stable in terms of its use and the gang's reach. However, that all changes in 2014. And there's a number of things that kind of happen. Part of it is actually China starts to push the manufacture of meth out of China. So what you suddenly see is the wholesale rate of methamphetamine tumbling. So 2010, it was like 80,000 US a kilo to buy it out of Malaysia. Well, it now sells on the border of Myanmar for about $1,000, and in Mexico for $500. So the more you make, the cheaper it gets because you're trying to offload it, right? And then, of course, the people that came around 2014 to 16 brought transnational crime links with them. And I'm saying 2014 because we've actually got an evidence-based research that we've done. You can see the addiction of our communities is giving the meth out to the gangs for free. You know, like here is the meth on tick, and they were handing it out free to people, and you saw that rapid addiction right across communities, right? To the extent now that it's everywhere. So they're actually enslaving people in those communities, right? Like, you know, this is next level. Once you've got them controlled, you've got them. They're committing drug dealing for you, buying guns, prostitution to children. Yeah, the social deprivation is chilling. You think back to Mr. Asia, very focused group, you know, those heroin addicts, very localised, right? Not at the extent that you're seeing now, right? Not even close. And methamphetamine is just as hard, if not harder, to get off than heroin was. Mid-2022, we saw a massive swing away from meth out of Asia to now basically coming out of the US and Canada. I think around 2017, you see particularly the Sinaloa cartel cotton onto the fact that they can make this synthetic opioid called fentanyl, and they can access the chemicals out of China or wherever, and they've got a ready market in the United States because of the oxycodone issues that they had there, right? And as a result of that, they suddenly start to cotton on the fact that you can actually obtain chemicals for the manufacture of methamphetamine. And what it means is the whole concept of legislation to schedule chemicals used as precursors is virtually a waste of time now because they're using legal chemicals. Here's a chemical, here's a chemical. They've got trained chemists making up new substances, and there's just this endless supply of chemicals going into the gangs. And now you're seeing this incredible ramping up in the mass manufacture of synthetics coming our way. We did this piece of study as method driver of crime in this country, right? So we pulled a cohort of 28,000 people, real people, with one addiction at least between 210 and 220. One conviction, it could be possession or anything, right? And then we took a cohort of 28,000 people who were the same age but simply no meth conviction. And it was chilling. The difference was unbelievable. So the meth cohort committed 1.4 million offences and incidents. The other cohort, 207,000. And the offending rates were across everything from murder, homicide, sexual offences, violence, the volume crimes, to road toll, which took a U-turn, by the way, in 2014. Drug dealing, 22% more. We're on a knife edge here with meth. We're stuck at about 16 kilos a week for 3 or 4 years. Australia uses 3.3 times per capita more than we do, and I think it's our health-based initiative, work with iwi and communities, that's been really critical. And then in July, it doubled, and in August, it stayed doubled, and we can't get our head around it. So it went from 16 kilos to 35 kilos consumption, and it looks right. We're going, what's going on? We're hearing they're handing out free meth. So, we are on a knife edge and we can't take our foot off. We've got to stay and be relentless, because they are, in terms of protecting our communities in that sense. And this is all coming off that global mass production, and they are just creating tonnage of cocaine, tonnage of meth. Even like MDMA, right? The concept of ecstasy, is that it's just a love drug. Well, the problem with those drugs is actually, most of these drugs is actually what the bad guys are putting in, the cutting agents. It's just terrifying. The health stuff off the back of that is horrific. I think New Zealand's well placed in the way in which we respond to the threats, absolutely. Certainly much better placed than we were 8-9 years ago, I think. And I think this is a process that will go on well beyond when I finish, I think, in the way in which we've sort of changed the thinking processes.